Hey guys, Daniel Burnett, owner of Train Like a Ranger and certified strength and conditioning specialist. Welcome to Weekly Trainer Talks. This is where I get in front of the camera and I talk about important training concepts. And I'm going to cover a topic that I get all the time, which is how do I improve at the PT test? And this will apply to all branches and other things like first responders, law enforcement, those tests as well. Even though some of the criteria may be different, the concepts will apply across the board. So know that this will apply even if you're doing, say, crunches instead of sit-ups, or a different length run, or pull-ups instead of chin-ups. This will still apply to you. A lot of people ask me, because I was an Army Ranger and I was good at the PT test. I would always max and beyond, and there was things I was doing as an Army Ranger, tips and tricks that I had picked up that'll help you guys squeeze more numbers out. But there's also things that I was doing to train up for these things that were actually pretty accurate. And these things were reinforced later through my degree, through my certifications, and through my application as a real world trainer. So there's a lot of things I was doing right. And one of those is going to this volume concept, how I was training. So to prepare for the push-ups and sit-ups, I would do time drills. I would go out there, I would do a 2-minute drill of push-ups, as many as I could do. I would take about 2 minutes rest. And then I would do 2 1-minute drills of push-ups, and I would take about 1 minute rest in between. And then I would do 4 30-second drills of push-ups with 30 seconds in between. And I would do the same with sit-ups. And while I didn't really understand training concepts at the time, this was right. And I'll explain why. So before this video, I did a video on muscle fibers. That's a good video to reference. I'll leave it in the description below, a link to it. But I talk about how training affects muscle fibers. So whenever we're looking at something like 2 minutes of push-ups and 2 minutes of sit-ups, we're training type 2 muscle fibers, okay? Specifically type 2A. What happens with these muscle fibers is they are anaerobic in nature, means without oxygen. These type of fibers use the lactic acid system to provide energy to them. So a byproduct is lactic acid. That's the stuff that makes you fatigue and get sore. And how we improve our ability to do more push-ups is by training and volume. We want to push past our normal limit. What that's going to do is it's going to increase our lactic acid threshold and our ability to clear lactic acid. So basically, all that just to say, do more push-ups and sit-ups and volume to increase push-ups and sit-ups. So whenever you're training for these things, get out there and do as many push-ups as you can till you can't move anymore, and then take a short rest and do some more. Okay? Keep pushing past your limit. And that's how you're going to increase your lactic acid threshold. So whether it be push-ups, sit-ups, crunches, whatever it is, I want you guys to train like that. Do as many as you possibly can. So that's correct for training. I'm also going to give you some tips that I learned as an Army Ranger. It's just some things that I would do during the PT test. So I knew that I could get 50 push-ups in 1 minute without too much fatigue, without my arms getting too heavy, right? That's that lactic acid coming into play. So what I would call it is a sweet spot. I knew I could do 50, and then I would take a rest. So I would take about 5 seconds. And in the Army, you can sag at the hips. You can elevate your hips whenever you're resting for your push-ups. And then you can resume your push-ups. Get back in your plank position and resume your push-ups. So I knew I could get 50 without my arms getting too heavy. And then I would rest for about 5 seconds, give or take. And then I would resume. I knew I could break up the reps. So big tip 1 is break up the reps. This was smart. So I'll explain. This goes back to type 2 muscle fibers and that lactic acid. So recovery is important. Think about, a lot of people understand this concept. 3 sets of 10, right? Whenever you go to the gym. So you pick a weight that's moderately heavy for you, and you do 3 sets of 10 reps. It's 30 reps total, but you took rest in between each set. Now, what if I told you do 30 reps, no breaks? Okay, just 30 reps with the same weight. Are you going to be able to do it? Maybe not. Probably not, right? Because what happens is you can do 30 reps whenever you got a break in between, but you can't do it in one sitting. This has to do with your body's replenishing of ATP, and that's, by the way, it goes back to that lactic acid system. That's what your body's doing, okay? And lactic acid is a byproduct. What your body's trying to do is produce ATP for your muscles to keep going. And ATP is just a fancy word for the energy source that your body uses to keep your muscles going. So whenever we take those short breaks, ever so slightly in our PT test, we are replenishing some ATP for our muscles. And again, you don't want to let your muscles get too heavy, because once that lactic acid builds too much, you're going to have a hard time cranking out more reps. So find your sweet spot. I knew mine was 50. I would take a rest, and then I would knock out 10. I knew I could knock out about 10. And then after I did my 10, I knew I could take it in groups of 5. And then after that, it got to groups of 3. And maybe it was only 1, and I would have to rest between each one. But what I would say is break it up and find your sweet spots, okay? By the end of it, 2 minutes, push-ups and sit-ups, I usually hit in the mid-80s for my reps. So, again, if I tried to do them all in one sitting, try to do as many push-ups as I could without any of those breaks, maybe I wouldn't have gotten mid-80s. Maybe I would have got, most likely would have got like 60 or something. So that's something to keep in mind, is break up your reps. Also, something else I would do, in my exercise index video, I talk about proper push-up form, hands under the shoulders, and then slightly tuck in the elbows. Now, that's good, but in the PT test, what they're looking for is for your arms to break parallel. They don't care about the degree of your elbow. This is good because what I would do is I would knock out 50 push-ups a certain way, usually with my elbows slightly tucked, and then I would start changing the degree of my elbows. So whenever I broke it up, I went to do my next 10 reps, I may walk my hands out a little bit. I may flare my elbows out. And this may seem like slight movements, but it's going to change the target muscle area involved. So this kind of gives other things a break and lets other things be the main focus. So you're kind of varying what's happening there with the push-ups. So that's my advice, is break up your reps, change your hand positioning, change the degree of your elbows. Looking at sit-ups, I actually, I'll leave a link to my sit-up video in the exercise index, because I talk about this concept in that video. So with sit-ups, you bring yourself up. This is during the PT test. This isn't how you train for it. But you bring yourself up, and instead of controlling your descent, you throw yourself backwards. And what that does is you're gonna use that momentum, pretty much bounce off the ground. So let me do it this way. You hit the ground, that momentum's gonna bounce you, and you're only controlling your muscle this degree up, right? So it's far less muscle contraction. You're not using your muscles for the full range of motion. You're using that momentum, throwing yourself back, bam, and then only controlling for this degree up. So that's something to keep in mind, is throw yourself backwards, use that momentum to your advantage. Now, whenever you're training for sit-ups, you don't want to, you want to practice it every now and then, but I want you guys to train in full motion. So control your descent, control your way up. Focus on being able to do that full range of repetitions. And then every once in a while, train where you throw yourself backwards, bounce off the ground, and, use those quick reps. So not only is your body moving faster whenever you do your repetitions like that, but you're using far less muscle engagement. So that's my trick for sit-ups. Chin-ups, hands facing in towards you, right? That's what the Army does, and a lot of branches of the military, they do chin-ups for their test. So the difference between pull-ups and chin-ups, which I get this a lot, is pull-ups is more back engagement, chin-ups is more arm engagement. Now, whether it be pull-ups or chin-ups, the ideas are the same. You want to build up the muscles involved, and you also want to train specific movements to get better at those things. So say you can't do one chin-up, say you can't do one pull-up. Take a machine with similar mechanics and train with that. So, everybody knows the pull down machine, right? You pull the bar down. That's similar mechanics to pull up. Now, if we're talking chin up, just reverse pull downs, right? So that's a similar mechanic. From there, you can do assisted chin ups or assisted pull ups with a band, or, there's other methods to do assisted pull ups. They have machines where they actually support your body weight as you do your pull ups or chin ups. So, what I would say is, do as many as you can with your body weight, still train in volume, but you may look at things like assisted chin ups, pull ups, whatever it is, and then assisted, machine pull downs or reverse pull downs. But do specific movements to get better at those things, and eventually you want to do the real thing. So just train as much volume as you can with pull ups and chin ups, and that's how you get better at those. Okay, so let's talk about the run. What I like to tell people to do is to train run and jog intervals. And so in a lot of my programs, I'll write in to have sprints and jog intervals. You may have seen in the military things like 30-60s, where you run hard for 30 seconds and then you jog for 60 seconds. This is actually a really good training concept, because what you're training your body to do is push past its normal limits. You got to think, whenever you're running, though, the idea is that you're going to be using a lot of type 1 fibers, which are aerobic in nature. These are the type of fibers you can take in oxygen and supply those needs to the muscles. Whenever you try to run harder, you start to recruit more type 2A fibers, which build up lactic acid, which make you fatigue. So what you do whenever you train things like sprinting and in those hard runs in between your jogs is you're training your body's ability to clear lactic acid, to increase its lactic acid threshold. What this means is you can push your body harder in a run without the fatigue, without as much fatigue, that is. So that's what I would say is start training in intervals, right? You can still run the distance that you plan to run. I would argue to run the distances that you want to run and plus some. So say you're trying to get better at the 2 mile, run 3 miles, and you can also train your 2 mile whenever you're training, you're testing your times and stuff. But get used to pushing past what is normal for your test taking. So that's an important concept. So things like the 30-60s is a great concept. You can even reduce that time. Maybe you do 30-10s. Maybe you jog for 30 seconds and run hard for 10 seconds, even a sprint, right? And you set something like an interval timer. You can get apps for these things, and you run that distance that you want to achieve with that interval timer, and you let it loop until you finish your run. So that's one thing that you can do to get better at those runs. Of course, run those steady state runs whenever you're testing yourself. Just run it to the best of your ability, no intervals. Train them both. Another underrated concept is having good shoes for the run. So the way that your foot strikes the ground through not only running form, but your shoes is very important. So I typically like to recommend the brand Brooks and Asics. They usually make good running shoes. And so I would recommend looking at those two brands. There's more than those two brands, but those are the two that I primarily recommend. So having good footwear with, and if you got different foot arches, look at getting insoles that are correct for you. Again, having good ankle support, good fitting shoes, and shoes that have some bounce to them is going to be good for you guys. So the way that your foot is striking the ground and propelling you forward is going to be important. Another underrated topic is nutrition. Having the correct fuel for your body is so important. When we're talking about these muscle fibers, they also pull in different energy needs, right? They pull that from the foods that you eat, and also how hydrated you are is very important as well. So your body's efficiency is achieved through training, yes, but even more important is diet. So make sure that you're hydrated for these PT tests. Make sure that you're eating clean food sources, whole food sources, eating a diet that is lean proteins, a lot of fruits, vegetables, drinking plenty of water, looking at getting some whole grains in your diet, and and just eating pretty much low to the earth, right? Like clean food sources, stay away from a bunch of junk food and stuff like that. It really makes a huge difference. And drink a lot of water. I mean, hydration is so important. So cutting the alcohol, cutting the energy drinks, cutting the sodas, that is going to make a huge difference in your body's ability to perform. So, quick overview again, guys. Getting better at the PT test is training in volume, using some tips and tricks, like breaking up your reps, changing your hand positioning, changing the degree of your elbows when you're looking at things like sit-ups, using your momentum, throw yourself backwards, bounce off the ground. Whenever we're talking about the runs, run in intervals, increase your body's ability to clear lactic acid, your lactic acid threshold, and you achieve that through training and volume. Also look at things like shoes and very important diet, whole food sources, fiber in the diet, drink a lot of water. So hopefully that helps you guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Check out trainlikearanger.com for all your training and nutrition needs. We sell workout programs, we sell nutrition programs, and merchandise, and have a lot more on the agenda. So be sure to check out trainlikearanger.com. Remember, guys, train to your utmost potential like a ranger.